Welcome back to Two Old Guys Reselling Podcast. This is episode number 80. I am Caleb from the old past. This is over there. Josh, the Bama J Bird.
That's me.
We are just two old, crippled, sick guys that are hanging out, doing much of nothing. We have been
Yeah, for
sick
real.
for like over a week now,
Yeah.
pretty much since we talked on
Yep.
the last podcast. I got sick. You got sick. We've been sick. I'm just now recovering. You're still kind of dealing with yours. My family's sick. Man, it's just been what a week. So if
Yes.
this is a short show, you guys understand we don't have a whole lot of breath today,
Yeah.
and there's going to be a few little coughs make their way out. But oh man, what about it? What about you? Feel okay?
Yeah. Well, we're here, just
Oh, we're
just a
here.
little north of zombie, is
North
how I
of
would classify it. I was telling you earlier and tell everyone else, I'm one of those lucky people that sleep with the CPAP on my face, and I think good many of our folks do probably these days. But we were reminiscing about how bad it was for us before we got the CPAP, and I told Caleb I'm on like day 8 now of not being able to use my mask.
Mhm.
Either my nose, my sinuses having the infection being so clogged up, or on the other side, the air blowing into my mouth, it makes me cough. And so I've got like 8 days with no mask. And so I'm like, back in that barely functional phase where you stay in the bed for like 10 hours, but you get like maybe 1 hour of sleep altogether. So I'll be glad to get that mask back on and get a good night's sleep, though, I'll tell you.
For sure, for sure. I remember back in the day before I ever wore one. I can remember driving home, from work, pulling up in the driveway and being like, "How'd I get here?"
Oh man, yeah.
I mean, just stuff like that. And people think we're crazy. They hear these things and they're like, "Oh no, 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 it can't be that bad." Well, I was literally a forklift operator, and I was on a stand-up forklift. I was telling you about this, and going down the main aisle of the company I worked for where there was traffic, falling asleep. Like I nodded off on that thing and I woke up. Luckily, nobody around me. And I'm like, this is crazy. I can't be driving
Mm.
this, 20,000 pound lift down through here, endangering people's lives just because I don't get good sleep. So, yeah, I
Yep.
have to kind of do something about it. But I finally, when I went, it's been, gosh, probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. And when I went, they done the test on me. My number was like 110 or 115, which is how many times an hour you get disturbed, either coughing, gasping, stopping
Mhm.
breathing, events, whatever they call it. So every hour, like twice a minute, I was having something stopping me from sleeping. You can't sleep like that. You
No,
can't. There's no quality. So yeah, it's a very
I don't even know what my
terrible
number would
thing.
have been, because I'm sure there was one kind of like when they check your pulse, but don't hold it for a full minute, because I'm pretty sure they weren't even, I wasn't even in there for an hour before they had already come in to
Oh, and
rescue me. It was just a 20 minutes maybe before they came in. My oxygen had dropped down to like 70 or 72 just within that short amount of time. And they were like, yeah, yours is really bad. We're going to have to go ahead and hook you up to a
yep,
temporary machine. And I hadn't known that. Like you said, it's funny. Like from here to our church is less than 10 miles. I mean, it takes us probably 10 to 12 minutes max, to drive it, 15 if we get behind somebody slow. And because we got to drive through town back across the little town, so the speed limit's really low. But anyway, I couldn't drive from home to church without getting the blurry vision, the droopy. I mean, it was, if I drove anywhere like 10 minutes down the road going anywhere, and I was already fighting trying to stay awake. I mean, it had been that way for probably 2 years. And a long trip, you can forget it, man. I'd
did you
I'd have
have
to
the
suck on as many caffeine drinks as I could to get myself as amped up as possible. And the bad thing with that is when you do that, when that no longer works, when that finally gets to the point that your body's not going to accept it, it's not like a slow thing where you start to have your vision blur. You'll be alert, and then you'll be out. And
Yep.
that's happening to me. I'd be sitting in a chair and someone having a conversation with a family member. Like I'm not a napper, period, ever have been. And I'd be sitting there, and 1 minute I was conscious, and the next minute I was asleep. You know,
Yep.
just within a second. Like I couldn't even remember getting sleepy. I just fall asleep.
I was so
So
bad for that.
I was nearly falling asleep on my feet at school trying to teach, standing behind the podium. I mean, I'd go to slurring a word, and feel myself slipping off in the middle of teaching, middle
Yep.
of giving a lesson. Like it was that bad.
Yep.
So
I've
I
done
wasn't
it.
functioning too well.
I've done the sleep. I used to be able to. We'd actually be. I'd sit down. I'd come home. I'd usually get home at around 5:15 because we lived really close to work where I worked, and but I would work. I'd go in at 6 in the morning. And I'd leave at 5 in the evening. I worked a lot of hours, 11 to 12 hours a day usually. So at 5 o'clock, usually five, I'd be home by 5:15. Come in, kick your shoes off, whatever you're going to do if you don't have anything to do outside or whatever.
Right.
And I would go ahead and take a rest in the chair, and Tanya would get there usually about 4:45. So some days she would have supper already started, some days not quite. But if she'd already started supper, I'd be asleep for I'd even know what was going on. And she'd wake me up for supper, and then I'd eat and I'd fall back asleep. And then, I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah.
Just never, there's no way you can have quality of life like that. And
Mm.
I had a friend that worked right there beside of me, and he was talking to me one day and telling me about all these things he was seeing, ghosts and people walking through his house. And I'm like, he's as big as me, probably, I don't know, he's probably 350 or more. He was a great old big boy. And I'm looking at him and I'm looking at his eyes and I'm like, "Do you sleep well?" He said, "No, not really." I said, "Have you ever been tested for sleep apnea?" He said, "No, I don't have that." I said, "Go get tested." Because he had a neck like a tree trunk, and all this. And I said, "Just go get tested." He was so bad that they put him on the BiPAP, which is, got the controlled in and the controlled out
Yeah.
because your pattern is so bad. And they even put him the additional oxygen connection. He was so bad. And he come back to me after like a month, and he's like, "Man, you were right." He said, "I have never felt so good in my life." Just I said, "Well, you've started sleeping again."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's amazing what you feel like, well, how you don't even realize how bad you feel when you don't sleep.
And
But
it's definitely worth, if anyone's listening that's got problems and hasn't been checked, it's worthwhile. A lot of health benefits. It can cause, weight gain, high blood pressure, all kinds of different issues, if it's left untreated. And I'm pretty sure that's where a lot of my issues of blood pressure came from, because I mean, I'm still fairly young, but I mean, I was not quite 40, and I'd never had a problem. But this was the sleeping problem started and progressed over the course of like 3 to 5 years, to the point where I got to where literally I couldn't stay awake at all. And it was during that time that when I was go to the doctor, or have a checkup, I'd start to have a bad blood pressure reading here and there. And then toward the end of it, before I got the CPAP, I was already having to take blood pressure medicine. And so my hope was that after getting the CPAP, I would, be able to get that under control. But unfortunately, as the doctors will tell you, oftentimes, if you ever cross that boundary to where you have trouble with it, it's hard to ever get your body to regulate it on its own again. So
yeah,
that kind of stinks, but I
well, at
guess
least you
that's what
can
it is.
stop it from getting worse,
Yeah.
that type of thing. Because man, we're talking. You're painting the picture of my life, because I same way. Never had a blood pressure problem. All of a sudden, one day, "Hey, you got high blood pressure?" I'm like, "No, I don't." They're like, "Yes, you do." I'm like, "Oh my gosh," and it's always kind of high. But
Yep.
so the moral of the story is, if you have sleep apnea, don't put it off. Go get checked
Well,
now.
take care of yourself. It's amazing how one small thing, what starts out as small, left untreated, can be the catalyst for other things if it's let go. I had my truck worked on. I think I mentioned this. My truck had started misfiring, and I had a former student of mine that's one of the best mechanics in the area here now. Had him work on it, and when he came to take a look at it, he said he's pretty sure it was all top end, just needing a tune up. And come to find out, it had 3 plugs that were pretty much fouled completely when he did the tune up, and that had it had been having a little bit of issue, and then I had hauled a big load of firewood, and under the pull carrying the firewood is really when it started messing up. Anyway, all that said, his words to me where I asked him, I said, well, do I need to, get a vehicle, borrow a vehicle to drive till you get back to fix it, or it's okay, just to maybe go to Barry twice this week to carry my, my packages to drop at the post office. And he stood there at me and said, well, if I were you, I'd just leave it parked. He said, because I'm pretty sure what's wrong with it can be fixed pretty easy. He said, but you just never know when it's doing something like this. So sometimes that can cause another problem that you don't have. He said, when it's running rough like that, said it's just bad for your engine, bad for your. He said, I wouldn't risk causing a problem I don't have just to drive it a few times.
Yep.
And so, our body's a lot the same way as my point. Sometimes it can be something that's very simple. Like if I went ahead and, got tested for sleep apnea 3 years sooner, I may not have high blood pressure. Who knows? I may not have problems with that. But, we leave something small, unseen about, and sometimes it can lead to other things we didn't even have a problem with to begin with. So
very true.
Anyway, there's your tip of the day.
Tip of the day. Oh, so yeah, we, I don't know. We knew we was going to record. We didn't talk about not recording ever since Kevin chastised me about missing a week here and there, but I don't have excuses anymore. Like I've got to do all this stuff, I've still got stuff to do, but not for a while. But yeah, what a week, but we're going to make it. We're going to get through it. This episode 80, we're trucking right along.
Well, of course, also our friend Aaron from over at Retro Renewed has been kind of hard on us too.
What did he say?
That one comment, our first episode in January, said, well, I mean, not January, I mean in December, like when we put out our first one, he said, well, I'll see you guys after the first of the year.
Yeah.
See you in January.
Yeah, that's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, he called it the bi-weekly or something like that.
Yeah. He said, is this the new Two Old Guys Every 2 Weeks podcast?
Yeah, every 2-week podcast.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, but we're trying to do better for sure. If I can get Caleb in line, we'll be all right.
Yeah, that's the good luck. So I gotta look something up. Oh yeah, yep. Okay. So I was just checking the old Alabama football game score. They're playing their bowl game right now. I got Josh on the podcast during the bowl game.
I know. I was watching. I thought, I can't believe he's asking me to do it today during the game, but I didn't say anything. I was actually watching when I got the message, and I was thinking to myself, he'll probably send a message and say, hey, you want to do the podcast when the game's over? And evidently he thought the game was already over.
It's pretty much over. It's the third quarter, the end of the third quarter, and Michigan's up 16-10. So
yeah. Did you see how it started? It was terrible.
I haven't seen any of it.
So I know we don't need to talk about sports forever on this one today, but they had said it was just going to be overcast, no rain. Well, right when the game started, it come like, I mean, a downpour. Like it was like pouring down rain. And Alabama's first 4 possessions, they had 2 fumbles that gave Michigan the ball. They had an interception, like on their first or second play after getting the ball back, and they had a mishandled snap that was a turnover. Not a mishandled snap. Maybe that was a mishandled snap. It was one of the fumbles. They had a fourth down play that they didn't convert, where they also gave the ball over on downs. But that was all within the first quarter, like within the first 10, 12 minutes of the game, something like that. And it was just crazy. Michigan's average starting field position was like at the Alabama 22-yard line on their first 5 drives. I mean, if you really think about it, they come out of that with 16 points, and the defense, Alabama's defense played really, really well. The offense, man, was just one mistake after another. I think that one stretch we had 3 turnovers in 5 plays. Like we had run 5 plays and turned over 3 times. I mean, it was bad. So
me and Logan, we have a tradition. Thanksgiving we play a Madden game, and Christmas we play a Madden game. So Christmas this year, I was in no condition. I couldn't even think about playing a Madden game. I was just laying in the bed, nearly dead. And I told him, I said, in a couple of days, we'll play a game or 2, make up for it. So we played, and I beat him. And then we played again, and he beat me. And we played 4 or 5 games, which is unusual for me. We played 4 or 5 games, and the last 2, I don't know what in the world. Listen, I played Madden for years. I'm not much of a gamer anymore, but I can still play Madden when I need to. He beat me that first game like 48-6, and the second one was like 32-7. But we've been doing this thing where we're taking different teams every time, and I
Right.
guess it makes a difference because I just randomly was choosing people. I took the Rams the first game, and I couldn't do nothing with them guys. Like I would throw, they couldn't catch nothing. So the last game, I picked the Chiefs. I was like, Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelsey, they'll not let me down. Pat Mahomes, I threw 6 interceptions with him. How is that even possible?
Well,
Well, like I never do that. And all of a sudden, which of course I'm going to blame. I told him, I said, you got me while I was sick, but, but yeah, it was fun. But Logan's been
always an
that
excuse.
in.
I would
It's
love
gotta,
I would love to sit down with some folks like, I know that like you that grew up on the games we did. Like, I'd love to play a few rounds of like Super Tecmo Bowl or something like that,
oh Lord.
with someone else that really knows the game. Because, I mean, you score like 500 points on that game.
Yeah.
But that'd
Oh,
be that'd
super.
be fun. Just reminisce a little bit. But so I got a question for you. We're heading into a new year, and I think we all probably. I'm not big on resolutions or nothing, but I do think running a business, it's always important to set goals. I think you can do that at any time, but of course, as we get to the like the accountability season, looking at our earnings and stuff like that, and how our business has performed, it's always a good time to kind of step back and do some evaluation and try to figure out how we can improve. So, what are you looking at yourself as far as maybe some new plans for your business or some goals for your eBay business this coming year without the I know listing, but I mean,
I was about to say that's one big plan. I'm going to institute listing into my plan.
yeah,
But no, I think honestly, I've been kind of going through my stuff, pulling out some of the quote unquote bad stuff. I think for me, and this, not every reseller's in this season of their reselling career or whatever, but for me, I'm tenured enough now in what I'm doing that it's really all about buying better stuff. Not that I can't buy cheaper stuff, but I got to get better at buying better quality stuff because all the small things that we do to just make our business a little bit more efficient, I've done. And I've done everything I can do. Well, I don't know if it's that I can do, but I've done everything I know to do up to this point to make it as efficient as possible. So now it's all about being smarter, being using wisdom in what I do and using just, overall in the whole aspect of my business, being smarter. But what I'm talking about is so I'm really, really bad, really, really bad if I go to a yard sale and there's nothing there. Like I just have to, I can walk away with nothing, but if I can find one thing, even if it's a $5 item, I buy it. I just, because I hate feeling like I failed at that
yeah,
yard sale. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's a little quirk that we deal with as resellers. We feel the pressure because now we're doing this to make money. It's not just, we don't yard sell now just for the fun of it. We're doing it to
right.
actually make profit and support our families and things. So you start feeling the burn, as you will. And I try to not buy just for the sake of buying. And I think over time, if a reseller implements that type of thinking, I'm not going to buy just for the sake of buying. Well, that will help your average sales price will go up. The quality of your store will go up. Maybe you won't have 2,000 listings. Maybe you'll have 1,500 listings. But instead of having 2,000 listings worth $30,000, you may have 1,500 listings worth $30,000. So you got to look at the overall picture. Yeah, can you succeed selling $5 items? Sure, if you sell enough. But do you want to sell 30 a day at $5 or do you want to sell 10 a day at $20? You know what I'm saying? And I know our averages need to be, that's just an example. But I know what I want to do. I want to sell better things and not, just to give you an example, if I rolled up and somebody had 500 magazines that were worth $7 a piece and they wanted $20 for all of them, am I going to walk away from that? Probably not, because I know even if I lot them together, I can make money. So I'm not saying don't buy it if it's cheap. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, as a general rule, we should probably use a little bit more wisdom before we buy a ton of stuff that puts us under that cheap blanket. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just end up having to purge a lot of it, uh, and donate a lot of stuff because it just ain't worth the space, and it ain't worth the time, it ain't worth the energy, it ain't worth the effort. And I've learned, like I just said, to lot. I sold actually some of the toys that I had in the old shed. I lotted up in here because I'm kind of not putting out as much stuff in this place as I had in the other one. So a lot of my Ninja Turtle stuff, Logan had some Star Wars stuff. I had some NFL helmets. I lotted all that stuff together, not all of it, but in different lots. And I've already sold the turtles, the mini helmets, and the helmets. I had like $5 in them all. Sold them for like $40. So I mean, can you sell those individually? Yeah, probably for like $3.99 or something plus shipping. But I could sell it all really quick. And I don't know the science behind, and I ain't going to pretend like I do, uh, what an average sales price really does for your store, but I know it does help. It's one step in the whole walkway of the whole algorithm, like
Yeah.
you have to be smart in all of it. You can't just say, well, as long as I have a $50 average sales price, I'm good. No, you got to have that, not necessarily that much, but you need to play that card right. Then you need to play your listing card right, the quality of listing right, the consistency, and just everything you do needs to be calculated.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were, I know I know it's not all about the number, and I'll say this before I finish asking the question. Like something like average sale price, you mentioned that the ASP. If we focus only on that, but we don't consider, for instance, like our cost of goods, because look, someone can have an ASP of $75, but if they're averaging $20 or better per item they purchase, then their profit margin doesn't necessarily reflect a $75, average, sale price.
Yep.
Whereas if we are sourcing, like you said, from garage sales, yard sales, that type of thing, and our cost of goods is relatively low, but we're skipping over those lower dollar sales and focusing more on items that are going to sell for 30, 40, 50, 60, $70 and up, and we wind up with an ASP over $50, the reflected profit margin is going to be much greater for sellers that do that than sellers that like the more you pay up, the higher your average sale price has to be to get the same
Absolutely.
profit. That's common sense. I mean, I know
Yep.
that's something we ought to be able to see. But that being said, knowing that how you source, because you do source kind of like I do more on the lower end most of the time, what do you feel like is as an average sale price is what you're looking? What are you looking to get to maintain or to reach for that?
On my average sales price,
Yeah, I mean, if you're selling better items, I'm assuming that's going to go up. So what are you looking to kind of get to on that without increasing your cost of goods much?
I would love, I was actually thinking about this the other day for a baseline, like bottom dollar. I'd love to sell nothing below $20. And then I would like to incorporate shipping in. So that really needs to be about $25 at least. And that's not counting the bigger stuff, which I need to do a video because I've really been weeding out a lot of my bigger stuff. And I plan to continue to do so. Just, I may actually eventually go get more of these totes, which they're a little different now, and have another row of totes and another row of the big ones up here.
Yeah.
Just because I can buy smaller stuff and I can list more of that type of stuff, which at the end of the day probably nets me more money than one big item, that tote full of smaller items. You know what I'm saying? I don't know the math. I can't give the math behind that, But yeah, probably $25 would be an ideal baseline, and I'm not there. Like, trust
Well,
me.
I think that has to do with your store model because you do free shipping across the board. So, like,
Yeah.
you have to organize your store and the model and design of your store to best accommodate the way that you want to approach it. And so I get that. If you keep the size in that ballpark, then you know that you're going to be in a 5 to 7 max shipping, cost range, and it makes it easier for you to calculate. Okay, how do I need to price this item to make the right profit off of it? So I totally get that. Like you said, the only issue is not all the time, but oftentimes, right? It's medium size and bigger items that oftentimes have higher sale prices because you get into electronics, collectibles, and things like that. And definitely not always the case. Heck, I mean, I know you can sell some little bitty items for big money. You find the right
Oh,
stuff,
yeah.
but yeah, I get that. But as an overall average, I know you wouldn't be shooting for 25. So what do you think what does that look like for you?
The overall average, I would love, I just, in my mind, $50 average sales price would be perfect.
Okay.
Now, if you break that down, that's probably going to net you like $35 an item. But when I go back to what do I want to literally profit daily in my business? Well, I would like to profit, probably $200 a day. That
Right.
would be a perfect, if I profited $200 a day, that would be a perfect amount. And I know everybody's saying, well, I'd love to do that. Well, I mean, that's just, we're talking perfect storm scenarios here, right? Like, what would I like to do?
Yeah.
So $200 a day, how many $35 items do I have to sell? Well, that's about seven-ish, 6.5, 7-ish items a day. To me, that's a perfect amount. I can easily handle packing, shipping, hauling, listing, all of that, 7 items a day. But the problem is, can I find 7 items a day worth of $35 per items to list? The
Right.
answer to that question is not always, but sometimes. So that ends up meaning I need to list more like 15 to 20 a day to account for those days that I don't have a $35 an item.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the beast. You've got to play the game. You got to play the game, and you got to win the good prizes and the bad prizes. You're
Yeah.
not going to always get the $35 sale.
But that's also,
I'd love to sell $100 $100 per item. That would be perfect.
oh, sure.
Sell 5 a day and go.
But
But
I think it's like you said earlier when you said to source better items, list better items, sell better items.
it's all
The
across
the,
the
the
board.
idea is the more time we put into sourcing and bringing home stuff that's going to take up more time to research, more time to list, that are in that tier that's below. If that still makes up 50% of what we're sourcing, then it's going to take up time across the board that we're going to be spending time invested more time and more time, the
Yep.
shipping, every aspect of it into those lower dollar sales. And now I get the idea that we can't just be sitting around saying, well, I didn't find anything this week, so I can't list anything. So there's got to be a balance, but that's where, learning better, learning more and being more meticulous. And we may have to put more work into the sourcing side. And that's one of the things that I've heard a lot from a lot of sellers. And I know it's got to be a balance, but sometimes there's something to be said, like you were saying earlier, for sourcing, even if it's a lower volume. If I can only find 25 or 30 items a week, but they're all in that $50 or more sale price range, but I've got to also spend an extra 10 hours sourcing, like really
Yeah.
combing through stuff, even going to thrift stores when I don't want to or whatever, when the yard sales aren't paying off, in order to get enough inventory for that week. But at the end of the day, for me, like, I'd be doing the part that I enjoy more versus sitting
Right.
there and researching little items I'm going to sell for $8 that I paid $1 for. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. I sell plenty of them. I got some in my store now. Go check them out. You're welcome to buy it.
It's exactly what, Chris always said, sell what you find.
Yeah, but you got
You
to sell a lot of $8 items to make a living.
got to sell a
A
lot
lot
of
of
it.
them,
A lot.
because the amount of total time you have invested, okay, in those items, between the sourcing of them, the cleaning, the listing, the picturing, all the stuff, the storage, the shipping, you got to sell so many. I mean, and really, you're not paying yourself very well if that's what you're selling all the time, unless you get something like this that you got 500 of. That's
Yeah.
the ticket. 500 of them,
Yep.
and they sell for $8 each, and you spent $20 on the whole batch, and you make one listing, and it just makes you money for the next 3 years. That's a
Yep.
good deal. But it's all perspective. Everything has to be weighed. Like you said, the magazines thing, I love buys like that because you can look at it and can I milk every single cent out of this and list 500 listings? Or do I go through and figure out how I can group these together to move them quickly
Yep.
and make a huge profit for myself and leave meat on the bone for somebody else that doesn't have access to inventory, maybe. Whether it's through shop commons like Kevin talked about, or even
Yep.
I do it on eBay. I was doing that on eBay for a while, selling bulkier lots of stuff. I
Yes.
sold a big stack of PlayStation magazines here a while back, like 40 of those. I sold them for was it $70 or something? I don't
Yeah.
know. It
Yeah.
wasn't much. I paid 10 cents each for them, So I just put them all together.
Stuff like that makes me want to go back to the days of auction on
Yeah.
eBay because, and I really don't know what would happen because I ain't done it in so long. But when you find, especially something like what we're talking about, okay, like a big magazine lot or a big music lot or movie lot, which it would be easy to do with movies because you can get them for a
Right.
dime a dozen all day at yard sales, and it take like 50 of them, 100 of them. I mean, whatever you've got, and make a huge auction lot of them and start it out at 99 cents and see what happens. I mean, what do you got in it? Maybe like $20. So yes, it's a gamble, it's a risk, but at the end of the day, if you had 100 movies and it was all say action movies or it was all comedy movies, there's going to be somebody out there that's probably going to pay $30 or $40 for that just because of the bulk, and they can add to a collection just like that. Uh, there's definitely something to be said about that, and what you just said. Shop commons. A person could probably make a small little side hustle out of just movies and just hats and just things like that for
Yeah.
something like that. And yes, Kevin, you're welcome for all this free advertisement we're giving you today. Oh man, he has infiltrated this
But
show.
it's like with Leroy though. There's still people like Leroy that have certain niches they focus on, and some do media
Yeah,
that go set up at a swap meet or a flea market. And if they can buy 100 movies, even on eBay for $40 or $50, and then price them at $2 to $3 each, depending on because some are going to sell better than others, some are going to be a buck, some two, some three. It
yep,
depends on the titles and the movies. But if they can go out there and move them quickly at very low dollars, bundle them
yep,
together, 3 for 10 or whatever, they're still doubling or tripling their money off of that investment. And of course, they're going to source every 25-cent movie they can.
oh
But
yeah,
if you're able to, if you have the market, access to the market where you can move them, any of them that are doubling or tripling your money are going to be worth buying. So I
yeah,
mean, at the end of the day, you're just trying to keep a large inventory and large selection. So I mean, there's always the resale market is multifaceted. It's not just a one-step thing. In fact, every one of us that resells, we're a middleman. We're going out and sourcing and buying from one in a resale market, bringing it to our place, relisting, and then selling it to someone else who oftentimes is the end buyer. But because of Kevin Shop Cummins, and even before that, lots of resellers do bundles. Lots of the resellers that we watch and we know that are on YouTube, they do their own box bundles and stuff where they sell them at a really discounted rate. It's more than what they've got in it. But their overflow from like going to the binge or something, they'll pack some boxes up with like 25 clothing items where
yeah,
they've got maybe what $30 in it. They'll sell it for like 50 or 60, make $10-15 off the box, and then the items in it are worth $10 to $15 each. So the
yep.
person getting it's got lots of room to make profit, you know.
Well,
But
absolutely.
but when you don't have time to get it all listed, and maybe it's not like we were talking about falling in that price range of stuff that you really want to list, it's a way for them to move it. And it's resell to resell to resell before it gets to a final buyer. And
Yep.
and so the price slowly marking up. And it's no different, than you think of something like our grocery businesses, right? You've got the guy that has the chickens. Eggs are really expensive right now, by the way. Here
Oh,
in
oh,
Barry, they were like $8 for a dozen of medium eggs.
yep.
But anyway, but you got the person that has that. But then you think of all the ways that they're bought up because you got these distribution companies. It's not just straight from farmer to store. So
Right.
Piggly Wiggly buys some or whoever buys some, and then they're sold. So they're sold multiple times. There's a markup at each level. There has to be a markup at each level to cover cost of storage, transportation, fuels, all these different things.
Yep.
And finally, it gets to the end consumer, and you pay the highest price as the end consumer generally.
But boy, I like my eggs, though. I can't hardly that was honestly, I didn't eat for like 2 days.
Yeah.
And this is how my brain works. You shot an arrow right through my head.
Uh-oh.
So I didn't eat for 2 days, and like I ate a couple things and it was okay, but nothing was hitting right. And Tanya made me an egg sandwich this morning. Man, I'm telling you what, them eggs was the best thing I've ever ate in my life. And they're store bought. I'm a country egg boy. I love country
Yeah.
egg, but them eggs was good. Like I'm
Yeah.
talking good.
I love an egg sandwich, just some salt and pepper on the egg on a piece of toast with some mayonnaise.
Oh, son.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, give me
So,
2 or 3. It's good stuff. And I
so
made me some eggs yesterday too. Like I made 4 fried eggs, 2 pieces of Spam, and a piece of bread or something, and they were good. But it wasn't like whatever she did. I don't know. Of course, it's always better when it's somebody else's cooking, I guess. But still, it was so good.
So I'm kind of in the boat with you on that, and I'll wrap this up on the plans, I guess, for the new year. But I'm kind of thinking the same thing. I would like to get my average sale price up above $50, and I know to do that, I've got to not only buy better items, but I got to stay away from the other stuff that I'm prone to picking up just because there's money to be made in it. And at the end of the day, the reality is I've got tons of stuff sitting around here that's not listed because I picked it up because there's money to be made in it. But when I go the next time and I buy a bunch of stuff that's better, I list it, and those things keep falling further and further to the back.
Yep.
And so you either end up doing one of two things. You donate it, you give it away, you lose the money in the end. You thought you were making money when you only spent $1 on it, but then you got a box full, a box of $25 items that you end up dropping off at your local, thrift store or whatever. And so you're losing $25.
Yep.
Because you were going to make, $8 an item off of them, but you come to find out you didn't want to spend the time to list all those at only $7 or $8 an item.
Yep.
And it's just, it hits you at two ways, right? Because if you do list them, it's going to kill your average sale price. It's going to suck up all your time. That's why you end up skipping over them. It's like our common sense tells us as we're operating that this is the right choice because it's better to list the $50 item than this $8 item. And I will get some of those listed, but by volume, right, you find more of those in the 50s, and you end up having more of those slip through the cracks over time that you don't list. Or maybe the first time you try to look it up, it's not going to be easy to list. And so, this ain't going to be easy. I'll save this for later because there's not much money to be made on it. And so you end up costing yourself time and money, and even your time is money. So it's definitely something to think about. But I want to get above 50. I usually operate somewhere in the 35 to 40 range most of the time. And that's doing buyer pay shipping. So I know, I'm fully aware that's not what I'm selling the item for. I mean, we all know if you do eBay, you know how that works, and most of the people listening to podcasts about reselling, you understand that we're not trying to claim, I'm making $50 off the item when I sell it or when that's the sale price. But in order for me to do well on an item that I'm paying, say $5 or less for on average, then selling it for 35 to 50 after everything comes out, that's what I've got to do to double or triple my money. And
I'm sitting at 31.50 right now. I just looked, but
really?
mine is free shipping, which it's the same either way. It's apples or oranges,
Right.
So at the end of the day, I'm probably averaging like $25 an item right now or something like that. But I mean, I haven't listed again. I haven't done anything quite a while. So,
Well, mine's down a little bit because I've been going through all that old inventory, and I've my sales are up overall, but my volume of sales that are in that under $20, category, like $10 to $20, is a higher number of those sales because I've discounted a lot of prices. I've, oftentimes the things that do accumulate in your store are lower value items that they may have a great market, but they have a huge supply. And so it gets harder to move those. Keywords are really important for that, by the way, getting the keywords just right. But at the end of the day, too, it's so easy on those types of items to price yourself out of the market by such a small amount. I mean, it don't seem like much, but literally sometimes being $1 too high. That was a good sell. That's a hat for $135.
Dang.
It's Borsalino Panama hat.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, sometimes you take like a pair of pants or something or a shirt where there's literally hundreds of options, in that brand and that size. If you're priced $1 too high, that might mean that there's 150 options that they're seeing when they sort lowest to highest before they'll
Yeah.
ever see yours. And so yours may be a really nice color, a really nice pattern, but they're going to have to scroll so far to even see yours that $1 is going to make it sit in the store forever if you don't get the price right. So
I know.
there's more than a science to that, and it's hard because you don't want to cut yourself out of money. You don't want to lose $2 on every item you list.
Mhm.
So pricing, especially with flooded categories like clothing, is to me is really it's very tedious. It's very difficult to really get figured out right, because you either leave money on the board or you have items set too long. It feels like a lot of times. So getting that perfect price to where it moves within an adequate amount of time, say 3 months or less, but you don't sacrifice too much. It's hard. And a lot of people will just take the approach, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I think too, if you're not like me, I'm not a primary clothing seller. So I mean, it's probably half of my business. But if I was doing only clothing, it'd be more important to get it right all the time, like get it really close to perfectly right. But a lot of people that don't sell clothes, but say 50% or less of their items, they just automatically undercut the market. They just, whatever the bottom price is, they just go, within reason, right? They just automatically hit it right there within a buck of that bottom price, and theirs moves pretty fast. But people that are sourcing nothing but clothing, if they did that on everything they bought, then they would lose a lot of profit, So
They couldn't do it. I mean, it's I don't know. The clothing market to me is one of those you got to love what you're doing type things, because there's just so many variations of what you just said: size, color, design, yada
yep.
yada. And I just want to take a picture of it and be like, "This is it. You like it, you buy it, you're happy. Let's go." Like
Yeah.
I've got 2 pair of pants Tanya bought in here, and I'm like, I might just send these to Josh. I don't know. Just so I'm sitting there thinking I don't want to do it, but
Oh man.
oh
So,
yeah,
are there
it's
any areas that you're looking at possibly concentrating on more, like any categories or something that you're not currently doing much in that you want to explore?
I'll be honest with you. I have been buying a little bit more in the silverware, that type of stuff. I would like to expand into that more, just because of the overall picture, right? You got to think about this in the overall. So I've got, I don't know, 5 or 6 different types of silverware right now listed, something like that. And it's less than a half a tote, or it's about a tote's worth of these small totes worth of stuff. And it's a lot of money. The footprint on that type of stuff is so minimal. That's the kind of stuff I've been thinking more along the lines of is, what is my max payoff? And hats is a good example. One of these totes up here can hold like 40 hats, not squished, not scrunched, lined up nice and neat, 30, 40 hats, something like that. And I'm thinking, if a person sources the right kind of hat, if it's say a $15 to $20 and up hats, vintage, nicer, just even new, like the whatever 49 40s or 59
The new
50s,
era, yeah, new era 5950.
those types hats, I've found some of those that'll sell for $35, and stuff like that is so minimal, and it's so easy to ship, whether you box it or bag it or whatever you do. You don't really have to use any kind of protective packaging or anything, because what's going to happen to a hat in a box?
Yeah,
It's going to be fine. So thinking along the lines of maximum payoff for minimum handling and storage and all that stuff. And the older I get and the harder it gets to pick up and move stuff around, I'm definitely not doing what I used to do. I remember there was a time I bought an iMac computer, and I had that iMac computer for like two or 3 months, and it sold. Tanya helped me ship it, and we ended up using like an entire roll, like a $25 roll of bubbles, just to make sure this thing was not going to get broke, that is just not worth it to me. Because even if I think I made like $200. But even if I made the $200, well, I've got to sit there and be worried the whole time that this thing's going to get broke. And there's a really good chance this thing gets broke because it weighs like 25 pounds, you know? So I look at it like that. Like the juggle is risk, risk and reward, payoff versus what I've got to get to do it, you know, just all that. Um, what I feel like doing, and that's a big one to me is like, what do I want to sell? Do I want to sell clothes? No, not really. Would you enjoy selling clothes? No, not really. And you've got to keep this at some level interesting. It doesn't have to be like a dream every day you wake up and you're walking on the clouds when you come and do this job. I'm not saying that. But if you keep it at a certain level of your interest is in this job, it won't be that hard to do. But if you go out
No,
there, if you don't like selling toys and you come out here and sell toys all day, you're
yeah.
going to get tired of it and you're going to quit. You know,
I think that's
true.
what it comes down to with the clothing thing for me. It's not, and I mean, I bought. That's another thing. It's an easy trap to fall into. Once you start to learn about any category, and you begin to see the items that you know there's profit on. If you're not careful, you'll slip further and further down that hill of
Yep.
well, today they're running this sale and you can fill a bag up for $8. You know, get like 15 items in it for $8, and you're technically paying like 50 cents or 75 cents an item. And these items will sell all day long for $12. But do I want to list a bunch of $10 and $12 items that by the time the fees come out, I'm making $6, $7, $8, and I've spent 15 minutes, you know, an item maybe prepping, washing, getting them all stage? It's not worth it. And you know, that's where you got to really get out of the seeing that sometimes all you want to do, especially early on, you just start to see the profit in things, or that's the way it was for me.
Yep.
It's like, wow, and you look, and if I had a workforce to do this stuff for me that I could pay, you know, like a lower minimal wage, right? And could train and would be reliable, then yeah, that you probably could really maximize in the long term doing that.
Sure you could.
But when it's just a one-man operation, you learn really quickly that it is way easier to buy more than you can list than it is to list more than you can buy. And so then when I say that about clothing, the thing with clothing for me is, I think even for you, if you've never like really done much with it, so you haven't really like explored it or expanded your knowledge on it. But if it was at the point to where when you walked into, I know there's some things you know about, but where you walk into a thrift store and as you're walking by this rack, you see a coat that as soon as you see it, you know that it's a $75 coat. You know it's going to sell for $75, you know, and you go and look at the tag and it says $8. Well, Caleb's going to buy that. He don't matter that he don't like clothing.
Oh, I do that. I like coats.
Yeah. What I'm saying, that's the thing though. You can learn that with jeans, you can learn that with shirts, you can learn that with anything. That, you know, if you comb through the rack really quick as you're going through it, there's going to be certain ones once you learn it well enough, it's like that's an instant $30. Like you listed, it's $30. It's sold. You don't have to work at it. You don't have to even. It's just like with other things. There's certain things in clothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look, if you buy a polo, like I'm going to point the wrong way. If you buy a polo shirt, like a regular, you know, like the 3-button or 2 or 3-button little Ralph Lauren polo, there's so many of those listed and they sell. Yeah, you might get $12, $15. If it's a really nice print or something, I mean, there's variation, but just a plain one that's a single color, $12 or $15, you're going to be doing really good if it's in great shape to get that much for it. Maybe just $10 or $12 if you want to move it fast. But they will sell. And if you're getting it for $1 or less, there's profit to be made there. But the problem is, again, you know, who really wants to do that? But if I'm combing through and once you learn what to look for, you'll learn to pass over stuff like that. But then you'll see this shirt that, and what I was going to say is, but you're going to take great pictures, have all kinds of measurements. It's got to be all this stuff.
Oh.
But then you find, say like Rowback is a really popular brand right now. You find a Rowback polo shirt and it's going to sell. Like you don't have to, the market is so strong on it. You don't even have to take the best pictures, you know, you don't have to worry about being so particular. You know what I mean? It's like same way with there's certain collectible markets that get to be in such demand that, man, all you got to do is list it, you know. You don't have to take a video of a TI, you know, 84 plus calculator to show all of its functionalities to be able to sell it. You take a picture. You probably could just take a picture of the front of it and list it, and you'd sell it. They don't care. And so there's things even in clothing like that, is my point, where you don't even have to work hard. It sells itself. It's that good, that strong of a brand, that strong of an item currently, that it sells itself. Then the trick is to stay up on what are those brands, what are those trends, what are those items that are selling. Because, by the way, a TI-83 ain't worth much of nothing anymore, right? What's a $20-$25 item, where
Something like that.
3 years ago it was $50 to $70 all day long, still. I mean, and I'm a fast seller, but it's all relative. I think for me, I would like to. I've really been enjoying the media stuff. To me, that's easier than some things, as long as it's in good condition. But I've been exploring that, and I don't want to get stuck in this vortex of selling $5 items. So I've got to really be cautious about that in terms of how I approach it. In terms of, we talked about listing too many low dollar items. But the good thing about media is, say if it's a CD and it's in great shape, if I list that CD and it's only a $7 or $8 CD, it takes me such a small amount of time to list it. There's generally always comps out there that you can copy the do the sell similar with, and 2 to 3 pictures, 4 pictures at most is plenty of pictures. Some will say, well, you got to take this and that and the other. And some will take like pictures of the playable side of the disc like 8 times at different angles.
Oh my.
You don't
need all that.
No, you know what I mean? Like, to get all the different, see if it's got any scratches. Like, I'm not going to go through all that trouble. It's going to sell, or it's not going to sell, on the merit of who it is and the overall condition, And so I found that I can list that stuff pretty quick. And I've also found that lotting together, you can move it a lot better and make you make less overall profit, but you make more profit on your time. Right. And so I'm interested in trying to explore that a little more, becoming better at it. And of course, I love sports cards. So I always have. I've got a huge collection from childhood, and that's just something that I think as I go forward, as I'm doing this, I would enjoy just kind of tinkering with, like you said, to have something that keeps me interested. Because even if that's only 10% of what I do, I think that's just something that would get me excited to work that day if I got to work with that a little bit, Yep.
So timeout for a sports break. It's now 19-13 Michigan with a 8 left. We're going to end this show.
And Alabama's got the ball.
Okay. We're going to end this show with the final score. Just Josh.
We're on the Michigan 15-yard line, first down, with 2 minutes left.
Second down now.
Second down?
I don't know. That's just what mine says. I'm on the
second down now. Well, I'm on ESPN app because, again, I had to play it in the other room, but not in here.
I'm kind of afraid to turn the game on while we're doing this. I don't know if it mess up my internet or something. So
that was me. I turned it off because I didn't want too much. I got plenty of great service, but it being all over Wi-Fi, I didn't want to pull the broadband down too much.
Speaking of football, so we don't really have many comments to pull from this week. Nobody hardly commented last week. That's okay. Yeah. It was the day after Christmas. But I will mention this one. Mary said, "Oh, I'm listening, Caleb." And I'm not going to pretend like I know how to do this because I don't. But I guess it's OHIO. I don't know. Anyway, she was bragging about that Ohio State announcing that they put on Tennessee. She said, "I finished it myself because I knew you wouldn't, LOL. I believe those kids were literally playing for their coach's job." And she's probably right.
Yeah.
And she's also pulling for Notre Dame, which I can pull for Notre Dame.
That made me sick.
I mean, they're not my favorite or anything, but I could get behind them and see what happens. But anyway, just wanted to mention that one comment. Yep, still 19-13, second down.
It's 4th and 10.
It's 4th and 10. Yep. 1 minute remaining. Oh, this is getting hairy.
4th and 10 at the Michigan 15.
Oh man. They need a touchdown.
Look, they did it to themselves. Michigan literally has scored 3 points that weren't given to them. And I'm not trying to minimize what they did, but I'm saying we literally got the ball, turned the ball over immediately inside, in the red zone. They were given the ball 3 times in the red zone, and we held them to 19 points. I mean, we played lights out defensively overall. And I think we just turned it over on downs, didn't we?
Did we? Oh, did they?
I can't.
Not updated yet, so I don't know. It says 4th and 10 at Michigan 15. So
No, it is 56 seconds though. But yeah,
uh,
anyway, I don't know what the weather's been like either. I know it had quit raining. But yeah, our offense, Alabama's offense, the second half of the season, it digressed. Like it's unusual. Usually when you have a new coaching staff and you come in, it's kind of really slow getting started. I would expect it to have been like this most of the season, more so than to come out like we did the first 5 or 6 games, even against lesser opponents to start with. And then we beat Georgia, like we had these big games like that. And then to see things just completely go like that doesn't make sense to me. We had the same personnel, same quarterback, wide receivers, running backs, but it's like our offense just started going to tapering off. I don't know if it's the play calling. I don't know. It's just unusual though to see it get worse as the season goes on without having like injuries or major, shakeups happening. So,
yeah, I want to read you something. I want to read you something real quick.
It's out of the joke book, huh?
No.
Oh, okay.
Not out of the joke book. No. This is out of Dad Jokes 2025, sent to me by Nathaniel and Ashley over at Auction. Thank you.
Wow.
And
I love all you guys too, by the way.
this one says, Dad, what's your favorite word? He says, drool. It rolls right off the tongue.
Oh my God. That's terrible.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Do you hear what was written? Do you hear what was written on the dentist's tombstone? This last cavity you'll ever fill.
Oh, ooh, that's a little rough.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! All right, hit me with your final words here.
Well, how were
turn it over?
What about sales? How are sales for you?
Oh,
Any good ones?
On time away because of the sickness, and really I only missed. I turned it off Tuesday evening, so Wednesday's Christmas. I didn't ship Thursday, and I didn't technically ship Friday, but I didn't have any sales Thursday to ship Friday, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I had one. Tanya had to come out and do one Thursday. She wasn't sick yet. So it didn't have anything that would have been scheduled to ship on Friday anyway. So we didn't really miss anything technically. But Monday I shipped out like 7 orders, something like that. Did have one good sale. It was a set of Franciscan china plates, saucers, and cups. It was actually 2 sets.
Was it the apple or?
No, these were, I don't know what it was a Franciscan china set.
Cherry?
No, they were like a green and a blue color. I don't know what the color name was on them exactly, but they sold for $115.
The Franciscan apple does really well. There's a couple of patterns in it. My dad did ceramics and pottery and stuff. That's one of the big things that he did when he did eBay all those years. So, final score: Michigan 19, Alabama 13.
Oh, what about that?
Breaks my heart. Not really.
Mine too. Well, at least they didn't lose as bad as Tennessee.
It didn't matter anymore, to be honest. After the end of the season, the way it wound up, and not even the playoff thing, just the way we finished. We finished so weak those last few weeks of the season. Losing to Tennessee, there's just no excuse for that. Especially after they got exposed by Ohio State the way they did. It's pretty obvious that, we shouldn't have played the way we did at Tennessee. But hey, it is what it is.
So funny. You're so funny.
Well, you know who did beat Ohio State? Michigan did.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
But you know who beat Alabama? Vanderbilt did.
Yeah.
Guys got beat by a hospital.
Vanderbilt's good.
Hey, they won their bowl game, didn't they?
Yeah, and their quarterback got permission because of his, he went to court over his junior college, like his community college playing time that was counting against his years of eligibility, and the court ruled in his favor that would not count. And so he was granted an extra year of eligibility, and he's planning on coming back. So Pavia is going to be there next year, and they said that probably opened the door up to a lot of these kids that had to start out at community college and
Oh
do a year
wow.
or two because of grades or something like that. And
Yeah.
then they only have like 2 years left of uh, eligibility. That is probably going to open up that door for them to play longer, which would be good for some of those, I think.
Yeah.
Some of them, athlete wise, they're good enough to probably make the NFL. Some of them, but it's really hard to come into a program, even when you're experienced from the JUCO level, and only have 2 years to learn the system and try to crack the starting lineup at a major Division I school. So that's kind of tough. So I mean, it'll give them a better shot at maybe long term, future in the NFL. So sell wise, I was going to say real quick, I feel like my sales haven't been as fast as I hope they'd be, but I just want to go over some of these things if that's okay. I got several I want to just mention because I think these are kind of cool. I mentioned media, and so this is why I said I want to learn more about it because, like, I sold. I don't know if anybody knows Dallas Home. He was I don't know much about him. I'd load from researching to sell it, but Dallas Home was like a contemporary Christian musician. Dallas Home and Praise from like I think the late '70s and into the '80s. But some of his stuff ain't worth anything. But this one CD, it's out of print. I sold it for $40. I mean, it's a used CD of Dallas Home, and it's contemporary Christian music. It's not something. It's not rock style. It's not like something. You know what I mean? It's not something you would think that, oh, even though it is, it might still have value. It's something you would absolutely, if you saw this in a box at a yard sale, you wouldn't even look at the box. You wouldn't even look.
No.
And so, what amazes me is how much more is out there than what we give a chance to. Um, I sold 8 Linda Ronstadt CDs as a group that were all used for $45, and I bought this set of uh, DVDs. It was like drum instructional DVDs by different drummers, and I got them for I think 25 cents each. It's one of my local thrift stores. I sold them for $48.87. So
I've
I got
actually done that before. I've sold
yeah.
stuff like that before.
So that stuff, I thought all that was really cool, just little media things. But and I also sold a Disney. If you ever see these, check those out. The Disney Collector tin DVDs. It's the metal tin that snaps open. But it's usually a complete series or a complete collection of a particular cartoon that they did, a particular character. And so I had Oswald sealed, and it sold for $45. And
Nice.
so, all those were really good sales. But as far as dollar amount, my best sales, I finally sold my silver tab Levi's, my corduroys, sold those for 80. And I sold a vintage needlepoint Christmas stocking. It's Sfera, SFERRA. If you never heard of it, look, always pay attention for those. This one still had the tag on it. I sold it for $125.
Nice. Nice.
So, I had some good sales in there too. I sold one of those Mama Says Demdeco Mama Says figurines that I've had forever. I finally sold another one of those for 75. So that was it's one of my first big buys of stuff that I bought. But those are all things to look for. If you see vintage silver tabs, if you see, always pay attention to vintage Christmas stockings, especially like the really fancy ones, needlepoint and stuff like that. Check them out because they sell really well. They have really good value. The Demdeco, the Hallmark, different Hallmark collectible stuff. Some of it's not worth much, but some of those series have some really, serious collectors out there that are willing to pay up, and they were limited runs on a lot of those things. And like I said, and then it's amazing what you can get for media if you find the right stuff and you figure out how to lot it up together. To me, even the Linda Ronstadt, $45 for 8 CDs may not sound, that's not a lot per CD. What is that? Less than $6 each. But
I don't know my math
but I
right.
had like 25 cents each in them. So it's $2 into $45. And I didn't have to do a lot but lay them out flat and take a picture. I mean, it wasn't a lot to that. So a lot of good money and stuff like that. And had some other things, but those were some of the cool ones.
It's awesome. That sounds like you had a pretty good rebound week there.
Yeah, after the one before, like I said, not a high volume of sales like I would have liked, but I had some really good sales because last week I didn't have anything much of value. I had like 10 or 12 items that were like $50, around $50 or more that sold. So
Mm.
that helps the week out a lot.
For all 7 of you that are still watching, make sure you go check out My Reseller Genie too, because it's
Yeah,
tax time. It is almost tax time.
that's a fact.
Oh, man. All right. Anything else you want to hit before we head out today?
I guess not. I think next week we may talk about a little bit about the changes in the clothes. They're changing the listing setup for that, like the conditions. There's
Oh,
been some
really?
videos made on it already, but if you don't know that on your own, Caleb, you might want to check that out. But
That's
starting in
cool.
February, so we may hit that up a little bit next week, see what some of you think about it if you have time to comment. But let us know in the comments if you're still listening, kind of what your plan is for the new year. Are you going to make any major changes? You got any major goals for your store? For your operation, like what kind of shifts do you think would make it, more profitable, or do you think are you needing to make? I think me and Caleb are in agreement. Move away from lower value buys, increase average sale price, especially above $50. And
List something.
yeah,
List something.
as Caleb said, just list again.
Just start putting
Yeah,
something up for sale, and it might help.
yeah, be a real reseller. So that's it though
Boy.
for me though. I'm
Yep.
fresh out, about
Yep.
talked out too. Voice is going.
Yeah, I know. That's the way it goes. Well, happy New Year's, guys. By the time
Happy
you
New
watch
Year.
this, it's 2025. But for us, it's actually New Year's Eve right now at 2:30. So it'll be New Year's before you know it.
Yep.
And yeah, for you guys. But anyway, happy New Year's. We wish you many blessings this year. And we're going to head out. But this has been Two Old Guys, episode ocho, however you say zero in Spanish.
That's
How?
Ochenta. Ochenta.
Oh, I didn't have a clue. I just know ocho. Okay. All right. Episode 80 in the books. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
See you guys.